Welcome to Beyond the Wild podcast, where we go venturing beyond the gear, beyond the subject, beyond the shot, find the heart of wildlife and adventure creative. Beyond the Wild podcast is brought to you by pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Listen in, we share tips and tactics learned from years of journeying into the wild. Your hosts are Jason Loftus, Ron Hayes, and myself, Mark Raycroft. Let's begin another episode of Beyond the Wild.
Welcome to another episode of Wild. Oh, damn it.
That's awesome.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We've got the full crew here tonight. Sorry, we had a little slip up there. We'll get back into a professional realm here in one moment, as soon as we all quit laughing. We've got the full crew tonight, and by the time you hear this, you should be able to jump online, join us on Patreon. We hope to have all you come along with us on Patreon, where you'll get some extra content at a higher level. You'll get not only the additional audio and video content, but you also have access to some merchandise that you'll get just for being a member with us. So we hope you all come along. It's the price of a couple cups of coffee. You'll be able to have access to that additional information where we'll literally share our tips from the field while we're in the field at times, and hopefully bring you some stories that you'll appreciate and that we won't have out to the general public, as well as the merchandise that'll be available on that site. Thank you all again for joining us. And Mark Raycroft tonight is going to share with us. Mark, what have you been doing?
What have I been doing?
What have you been
editing.
doing?
I've been editing, but no, that's not true. I got to wind the tape back a couple seconds. I was on a trip. I've been editing the last few days. That's not relevant. What's relevant was I had an amazing trip into the backcountry of Algonquin Park in central Ontario last week. And it was a much needed decompress and a great social time with three fantastic friends. Bill, Justin, and Terry, shout out to you guys. Had a great trip. And it's something, we all, it's just like-minded photographers in the field. When you spend time with these colleagues and friends, it's such an important time of sharing on all levels of who we are and the experience itself. So it was a great trip, 4 days, 3 nights in the backcountry. And it's spring, so the water's cold. The ice has been out. I think it was out early this year, but the water's not like freezing cold, but it's cold enough that the lake trout are up at the surface. So for shore lunches and fishing opportunities for dinners over the campfire, great atmosphere, amazing fresh fish. That element was fantastic. The weather was very dramatic. So, we have to be careful on spring trips. I've talked about, scares in the past about this cold water. And for me personally, I, prefer to stay closer to shore on bigger lakes when canoeing in the spring when the water's cold enough that you can't swim a long distance without getting hypothermia. So it's just some level of caution and smartness to that. Of course, we all have our life preservers on. I even purchased a dry suit, which I brought it. I didn't wear it on this trip. It was going to be fantastic for B-roll because it looks like I'm straight out of the Star Trek Enterprise wearing this bright orange suit. But then there's no worries about going in the drink if something happened, and it never has. But it's something to be aware of in spring trips. But we had great fortune in that the day in trip and the day out were beautiful for traveling. And it was 5 hours to get to the site. And honestly, the physical exertion, which is, relatively significant, and the friendship, the jokes and banter that happens. It was a fantastic time. It's an effort shared with friends in this case. That way, the portage was a long one. It was 3 kilometers, so maybe close to 2 miles. I'm guessing at that, and but we had to
For
do it
those of you,
3 times.
that speak Americanese, it's a portage.
Portage, is it now? But that, and the bugs weren't bad because it's spring, right? And by June, things start to become thick. There's a window of 6 weeks to 2 months where backcountry camping can be more challenging. So we have bug shirts for that, and hope for breezy days, or pick campsites on a point that's more breezy. But this was great in the spring. But the trip in was fantastic. The trip out was spectacular. The time there was great, but also very dramatic. The second night, we went on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, we had a crazy thunderstorm come through later in the afternoon, and we have 4 small tents, and we're all in the tents around the site for the couple of hours of the thunderstorm. And that was an experience, and got started a new book. That was good. But that night, there was an even bigger thunderstorm, went on the north end of the lake, and simultaneously one on the south end, and they both missed us. But the photos and footage that we and what we witnessed, it was like being at a Fourth of July or Canada Day fireworks show. The lightning and thunder was every other second, and we were just fingers crossed it didn't hit where we were, and it went north and south, and the smartphones now, I mean, it was just amazing to see what they could capture for the lightning jetting across the sky and stuff. And um, the bookend of that story is, it was funny when we got out, beautiful sunny day. We get one of our traditions on when we get out is to stop at one of the nearby restaurants. This one, a favorite on the east side of the park, the Mad Musher restaurant, and have a fantastic burger and and decompress there before going back to civilization. And the waitress said, "Oh, she could tell we'd come out of the back country. I mean, we're ravenous, and we look scruffy and maybe didn't smell fresh. I don't know. Although we did take a swim. That's a funny story on how cold the water was. But haha." But the she said to us, "You, how long were you in for?" And we were like, "Well, the last 4 days." And she's like, "You guys were in there for the storms?" And we're like, "Yeah." And she's like, hunched up. She said, "Oh my goodness, we were told to shelter in the basements for tornado warnings, and you guys are out in tents." So that was that huge storm that went to the north. That was spectacular to witness, but not be underneath of, thankfully. So it was a great trip, and just the time around the campfire at night, the stories, the camaraderie, and it's something you know, for Beyond the Wild listeners, I mean, we all do it with our friends on our photography trips, but it's so important to spend time with people we care about that are like minded, and have a break, right? I mean, I've mentioned this on previous podcasts that we've done, but something about that is the same with photographing and hiking. You're watching the animals, you're paying attention to the weather, where your feet go, what you're going to do with your camera. You're in the present, and to be in the present for several days. And I heard something, I don't know scientific accuracy or not, recently, that it takes like 3 days of being in that kind of mindset to give you your brain a reset from stuff like social media and these distractions that consume a lot of our time. And it really feels that way after a trip like this. So it's rejuvenating and refreshing, and it carries through back home in civilization to more efficient and appreciative workflow too. So it was a great trip, and I got the headlamp on still. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I had my water filter around my neck a minute ago, but yeah, last week Algonquin's amazing for all the wildlife. That's the wind and the mature white pines on the points, and the loons calling at night, and those that have experienced it know. Those that haven't, if it's reachable, should consider it.
Mark, you never really have, I don't think, taken a chance to talk a little bit about that, but you have a page called Adventure Algonquin, correct? On Instagram.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And
Totally.
that's something that if folks are interested, you can get to see a lot of this kind of stuff. And I know I was following along on some of the stories that you shared, and it looked like an incredible adventure. And that trout dinner looked amazing, and I was drooling over it from from St. George, Utah. So, but yeah, I mean, those, if you're interested, go check out that Instagram page, and you could get a better feel for what Adventure Algonquin or what Algonquin has to offer. But
Yeah. It's amazing. It's a provincial park, but it's very large and full of lakes and rivers and backcountry and moose and some lynx sightings recently, which is cool. Foxes, wolves, beavers, all kinds of things. But it's a Canadian shield. It's the ecosystem is something about it is really grounding. One of my great friends on this trip, Terry, spent most of the time on around the campsite and on the rocks in his bare feet. He says he just wanted to feel connected to the land, and just these the rocky shores and the mature white pines, the wind, the scent, everything about it is aside from adverse weather, makes for a great experience. And yeah, Adventure Algonquin. When I started that a few years ago on Instagram, I thought it was a bit of a coup. And it's like anything you start, you try to come up with a good handle, an interesting name. And we put this together. And when you put Adventure Algonquin together, right in the center, at least to me, glaring is the word real. Adventure Algonquin. But when you look at the two words meshed together, it's real. And this is about reality. This is a real experience. It's, dirt under their fingernails. It's wet feet on the portage. It's rain in the air. But walking through a rainy day is something we hardly ever do. But it's refreshing to breathe in the damp air, the smells of a rainy day. There are no bugs on a rainy day. So anyway, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, that's on Instagram, and I've just actually, I tell the story of this trip, and I'm trying to put a post up each day to give the flavor, and I'll do some reels and stuff too.
Awesome.
And you
That's
guys, how
exactly
you
what
doing?
I was going to say. We haven't talked about that since we started this Beyond the Wild. And you have that one, and then you have another one as well, right? Are you still keeping up with the dogs?
No, it's not really active on that one. It's the wildlife is my primary page. That's my love goes into that Instagram page with all the trips that I do with the wildlife, and Adventure
Hmm.
Algonquin is like I mean, it's one of my favorite places to go, and it's a time thing, right? I'd love to do a Newfoundland page. I'd love to do different places that I travel. It'd be fun, but you just can't manage the time to run that many. So even Adventure Algonquin, um, I hadn't posted on for a few months, and I just want it to be relevant content. But there's a ton of that now after this trip. So the two pages really take my time, and Beyond the Wild, right? Our mutual
Right.
contributions to that is something I'm really committed to and focused on as well now. And not only promoting each episode as it's coming out, and reminding people about it, but what's coming in future, or just fun stuff that we've experienced and share, or images that can help highlight some element of nature and wildlife photography. So there's that now too. So
Hmm.
yeah, those three really. And again, if I was gonna, yeah, my wildlife and Beyond the Wild and Adventure Algonquin are the ones that. The other one's more just a placeholder, honestly. But it's
Yeah.
I started it years ago, and it was a weird situation with Instagram. I got flooded by bots on that page, and I blocked like 30 bots within like a week, and the algorithm, I guess, thought I was unfriendly, and it would never take traction. I could never get it going. So I was like, well, then
That's
I've since unblocked them because it was years ago. But it's unless you're extremely passionate about growing a page on social media when it's new, it takes a lot of commitment now, or some really good luck, or being really smart with the algorithms. And I did receive a call from a gentleman at Meta at Instagram a few months ago, and like if they offer a 15 or 20-minute tip session, and I can just share a few of those insights with our listeners. One of the things he said was hashtags. I mean, I always, prior to this conversation, hit the 30 max. Why not? His suggestion, for what it's worth, was 8. He said, don't use more than 8 hashtags, is what he told me. He said to do as many reels as one can. Unfortunately, that's what they want. For those that have video content, that's great. They're fun to do. I love creating reels. It's creating a visual story. It's like our YouTube channel where we add photos and video content, and then people get more out of it when that's possible. But the suggestion was doing reels through the week and posts on the weekends. And stories, I was told, only go to your followers. People who don't follow you won't stumble on your stories. Um, but and that being said, everybody's feed is their own creation, right? And if you want growth, I mean, you can see what some of the pages that do reels in certain styles have grown substantially. But it's also who you are. It's your portfolio, it's your work, and it's what you love, and it's irrelevant. Whatever that might be for content is what you should put out what you enjoy doing. And I get trapped in that too, right? I have Scott Stone on a previous episode, a recent episode, was talking about bears and how he mentioned that bears get the most traction. Well, they do, and for somebody who started a bear centric page, that makes sense. Um, for me, they don't. As I like the images just as well, but I know if I put up a bear, I'm going to get 1/4 of the traction because my page is boosted around large antlered animals, and those are the ones that help it grow. So I mean, I do it for a business, so I cater as much as I can to the algorithm because it's important to me to have growth. So I will make sure those greater traction images and reels get up. But I was just wanted to say to people that, this is for, if it's not for business, if you're doing it because of the love of photography, the love of the game, of the sport, the activity, then do post what you love to post. And anyway, it's Instagram is an important tool. Hey, what do you guys, this might be a little dated by the time this airs, but what do you think about that whole new AI notification on some people's posts? Have you seen that? And I've read up on it, and there's some backlash happening now. But
And where's the backlash coming from? What I've seen is it's now where they're telling you that if you've got AI generated images or videos, that they want you to note it as such,
you're right. There's a toggle. There's a
as
toggle.
you're doing a post or something, right? Yeah, on the toggle. Yeah, yeah.
So there is a toggle there. And maybe that's what's happened. Maybe some people have elected to adjust the toggle. What I've read is that for generative, the new Photoshop has more and more tools coming out. It's awesome, the versatility of this software. But the new generative fill on the beta version of Photoshop, and maybe the primary version in Lightroom too, I read, and so I don't know this for fact. It's just something I read, but that their algorithm trips on it, and if generative fill's been used on an image, then there's an automatic display at the top of the image says something AI created with AI or something. And I've seen posts and stories this week of photographers saying, well, wait a minute, all they did was remove one small thing and didn't affect the animal, the bird. They didn't change the bird. They removed maybe a feather that was out of place, or maybe there was a branch in the bottom corner, or something like that. It was, and to them, that wasn't generated by AI. The interesting thing that I read was that if you use a crop tool or the remove tool, it doesn't trigger it, which are the same functionality as a generative AI replacement
Mm-hmm.
tool. You can also do a screenshot, and that gets that drops the tag that they pick up on. But anyway, if something has been significantly modified, then it makes sense. But at the same time, I would hope that these social media giants that are so important to all of us would put the onus on us to declare, if it's been an AI created image, because we
Yeah,
all work
but
raw
then
files.
you've got I've seen
Well,
one
most
in
of it is raw.
particular is he does aurora on different landscapes.
Okay.
Every image in the feed. He's got over 100,000 followers now. Just started the page a few months ago. These images are crazy. Every single one of them is AI generated
Hmm.
completely. Not
Okay.
just not just enhanced, but every one of them. And he will not admit that it's AI. It's obvious, but
Right. So in that case, but this is an interesting discussion because is the onus on the person that's creating it to do it, or is the onus on the social media algorithm to pick up on it and declare it? I think the honesty is on the person to do it. That's my take. I mean, some of them are very, very obvious when it's done, but the thing is, we all
Well,
need a raw image is so plain, right? A raw image needs
mm-hmm.
it
Has
needs
to be
work.
enhanced. Yep.
It has to be enhanced. So, where is the line that it becomes an AI generated image? I'm not taking the caribou off the tundra and putting it on a New York City streetscape. Well, then I would declare it's AI, and I'm going future cool here, right? But if it's where's the line drawn? If there's a caribou and there's the butt of a caribou on the right side of the image, taking up 1/20th of the image, and that gets removed, is that AI generated?
One
It's an
twentieth
interesting,
of it is.
right? So, and I know we'll have listeners that are right across the spectrum on this, and that makes sense. There are total
Mm-hmm.
purists, but again, with raw, you have to do work. Do you remove a branch and then it's AI generated? I mean, to me, it's not, but to somebody, it might be. But I think, again, I guess the purpose of this conversation is that it seems as though there are images being flagged that shouldn't be. And when I first encountered it, it's like you don't give it a like because, oh, it's AI generated. There's a picture of a fox. It doesn't need to be AI generated. We can get great pictures of foxes without doing that. But then when you realize that it was, well, such a minor change, but it got flagged for that, then I still like it, right? You guys.
let me play devil's advocate, Mark, with you here a little bit though, because I hear what you're saying. I don't disagree, but if you're using the AI tools
Mhm.
to do something to an image, and that generative fill is pretty incredible. I don't if you've played with it at all.
I haven't used that one.
It oh,
I've
I
used
mean,
the.
just playing with it, I just trying it, right, playing with it, and it's incredible what it can do.
Mhm.
Even though it doesn't necessarily mess with the animal, like you don't, let's say you're just doing background stuff. It's definitely not anymore, depending on how far you go, what your image was when you took the photo, right? And I get, and then so there's this gray area. Where do you draw that line? I think that's really ultimately the question. I think that's different for all of us. But I think there's got to be somewhere amongst photographers in general and creators in general of where you draw that line. I mean, I don't know if you use the generative tool, does that mean it's AI? A percentage of it is, or maybe we need to be clear about what we did use the AI for, because at the same point, what you're saying is true, but then there are creators out there, quote unquote, that are getting large followings and making money off of things that are not their work. They are fully AI generated items and they are getting paid, right, for that creativity, that creation. And all AI generated images are coming from other images that are out there on the internet, right, being pieced together.
So that's different,
So
right?
that no, that's different,
That's
but it's still
adding.
AI. My point
Yeah.
is where do you draw the line of saying something's been modified using AI?
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I don't think it can just be left up to I don't know. I think it's kind of cool that Instagram is trying to do something about it. Is I guess my point,
Oh,
because
cool.
it's obviously being abused, right? Or they wouldn't even. There's. I guarantee you, there's people that have been complaining to Instagram about it, and that's why they try to put up something to address it. So it's impressive to me that they're actually even hearing that and trying to do something about it. But
Right.
if people were honest, you're right. If everybody was honest about it, wouldn't be a need for it. But
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah. So these tools. So if you, I mean, and you, I haven't used a generative fill, and I haven't replaced anything in an image with something from outside the image. Right. It's
right,
more of only if there's something distracting, then the remove tool is something I use.
right,
So, but yeah, what's obviously to the purist, some people take the frame and it can't be changed, right?
right,
You still, when you work a raw, so it's okay to work the color, contrasts. Is it okay to work shadows? Remove tool, where
right.
the line is different for everybody, and it's something that but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation, and it is definitely a conversation of today, of the times, with this new technology. That seriously, I mean, I haven't tried the generative fill, but what I've seen as examples, it's like crazy, right? But yeah, you can make a wildlife image look like out of a video game, but then it becomes obvious, and obviously isn't
Yeah,
something somebody would do if they're marketing or an image, unless they were declaring that and it was like for some kind of art gallery thing that was alternative presentation of an image, not actually what happened. But yeah, for me, it's interesting to think about the remove tool. And so yeah, if you have, and I I accept, and I know a lot of listeners will say, yeah, if there's a white branch there that's distracting, it shouldn't be. You shouldn't take it out because that's what really happened. But there's also the side of when you're working as a professional and there are a lot of great images out there you're competing with, and by taking that distraction out, the image is more visually pleasing, and it was something that was, even, it's not like noticed in editing, it was noticed when the image was being taken, right? It was unavoidable. So anyway, it's an interesting discussion, and I know people will have varying opinions on it, but yeah, the remove tool is something I use at times. But yeah, the Instagram. So yeah, we have a totally different take on it. That you think it's
well, I don't know if it's. I mean, to me, like the where my thought was going, and I kind of lost it in that little rambling there. But
no, you didn't.
is if you're doing it manually, right? I mean, is that maybe where you do it because you're doing the work? You are doing the work as the artist, and that's what, as photographers, that's what we really are, right? And we have to add back what we try to make. You and me are very similar that way, and I know Ron's very much the same way too. As far as like, I really want to try to portray what I saw. I don't
Mhm.
have any problem using a remove tool to remove something that's distracting, but for the most part, I try to make it look as realistic as possible with some additional, I like to saturate stuff too. I mean, I think I love the color. I love that stuff too. And then I don't have a problem with, darkening some shadows and that stuff here and there with my style. But for the most part, I really try to keep it as realistic as I was seeing. But there are other people out there that, like you said, I know a few that have reached out to me, asked me questions about it, that have said, if you do anything to it that way, as far as like, other than just some normal coloration, and if you remove anything, then
Right.
it's no longer an altered image, right? So I mean, you're right. It's a personal decision to a certain degree, but this whole AI thing is definitely creating a
New time.
creating a whole nother level of issues that we're going to have to be thinking about and dealing with. But
Yeah, I guess my take is, and yes, I'm along the same lines, but we're visual artists. And just because we were born in a time that has the tools that we can enhance an image, I don't think makes it any less visual art. However, I do agree with the statement that, and there's been court cases already, and there's actually a lot of copyright law issues coming up because of the AI generated images. And is it truly your work? Can you truly copyright that image? Because it is not, in fact, your work if you use AI, because AI is, from the point that Jason just made, AI is using millions and millions of images to learn from. And so, is it in fact your copyrightable work? Now, you can sell it for sure, but you can't copyright it
That's a
as
deep dive.
things stand right now.
Hmm.
I've done when Photoshop enhanced the sky replacement tool, and you used to have to go in and manually cut things out. And now it just pretty much does it for you. There was a really nice mule deer buck down in Colorado that I got on the skyline, got a silhouette of this buck, and I'll put a picture of it on the video when we do the YouTube. Um, I took that silhouette, which was completely underexposed, but it didn't really have any choice, and I took one of my favorite full moon shots and threw that into my sky replacement tool just to see what it would do. And it's a great image. I've sold it on metal and on glass. I tell everybody that's a composite. It's two different images, but it turned out fantastic, and I like the outcome and posted it just because of that. Just because I
Hmm.
like the outcome. They were both images that I took, so I don't have any hesitation there. And I tell everybody that it was a composite. It's not something that I shot together. And it's pretty obvious if you know anything about photographing the moon and photographing a deer silhouette. They're both in focus, for crying out loud. That's your first clue. But I don't have a problem with things like that. And I think people can sell them, but there is some case law coming down already about AI and what is in fact copyrightable. I think, to go back on the discussion a little bit further and go back to what Mark was talking about, if it's my visual art that I'm creating, I can do whatever I want given the tools that I have available to me. Um, if you're entering a competition, however, for the same reason, and if you look, Photoshop now has the ability to detect work that's been done in layers. So a lot of these contests now that require it to be, you know, for lack of a better word, an unaltered image, you can go in and, you can change your color, you can change your white balance, those kinds of things. Some of them you can crop up to 10 or 15 or 30%, but no more. Um, a lot of these contests now can go in and just check the layers, and they typically ask for your raw file anyway, so they can compare it to the actual raw file with these competitions. And they, you know, so if you're entering in competition, it's one thing, but Instagram doesn't have the same requirements. Instagram doesn't have the same restrictions. So we can pretty much do whatever we want. And that's been obvious seeing some of these pages come up that are completely AI generated images. And it's not hard to tell. It's sad for me to have been on Instagram as long as I have, and to see somebody that's been there for 4 months using fake images have 150,000 followers or whatever. But it is what it is. They're playing the game, and I
Well,
don't play the
just to
game,
clear,
so therefore I don't grow. So there's give and take, and that was a long rabbit trail. We haven't even got to where Jason's been lately.
It's a
deep
very
topic.
it's a very relevant conversation, right?
It
That we're going
is
to have to
for sure.
continue to have, for sure. So
Mhm.
It goes in so many directions, and it's yeah,
yeah,
it's very interesting, and it's
it's
very
not a simple one
prevalent.
for sure.
Not simple,
Yeah,
no. Do you use the
yeah,
tools? Which tools do you use or not? And in what situations do
And
you do
how?
it?
Yeah.
Do you create? If you're
Yep.
creating artwork, what is an image? Or anyway, yeah, um, yeah. If listeners want to send in, we know there are lots of you all over the spectrum of opinions on this. But if there's questions or insight on it, feel free to DM us and send some stuff our way.
Hmm.
yeah. We'd love to hear perspectives from all of you. All of you, if you have the time, it'd be very interesting to you know. I know I'm the kind of person who thinks I have my mind made up, but I like to keep my options open because I've been convinced to think otherwise many times in my life, right? So
I'm
I
in
hear a perspective or I hear a point of view that I hadn't considered, and I think that's important for all of us to try to keep our minds open to those kinds of things. But
I'm incredibly closed minded. So
like a book just slammed shut.
boom, baby, lock it up.
Yeah, it can't help but be with again the how readily this is changing. It's a good conversation, but
Mhm.
uh, anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Well, on the other
Jason,
side of this, Mark, I'm sorry, but real quick, the other side of this that's going to be real relevant for a lot of us is, you know, are we going to have continue to have publishers and people that want to use images that will hold up the ethical side of things and want to continue to use real images that aren't AI altered, so that it doesn't take a ton of jobs away from the industry? Because to me, that's the real scary part, right? Is you could see this where these images are getting better and better the longer AI is around, and an editor could just simply say, I'm done. I'm just going to do AI images, and I'll say they're AI images, and I'm not going to pay any more photographers or creators anymore. I don't need to. I pay for this tool. I use those images. I state them as such, and I've got my magazine. Now
So,
that's a stretch. I get it, but
but
no,
it is and it isn't because so like for instance, there'll be publications that'll send us all a shot list, and they want very specific shots to help them to tell the visual story,
yeah,
to go along with what they've got in the written word. They're very specific. Want horses going through aspens with two riders, or a pack string going through aspens crossing a stream. And so if you don't have those images, you just don't submit anything. And now that editor can go on and create it. And Getty Images is one of the places. Mark, I know you have images in Getty, with Getty, but Getty Images is one of the places that they are allowing these platforms to go use the images that they have as that people have submitted to basically teach the AI.
yeah, it's pretty wild.
So that's a stock site that people have placed their images on in an effort to earn money from those images, and now they're allowing AI to go on and look at those images just to learn for free. And those photographers don't get any of that money.
Yeah. In my head, I want to say and hope that there will be ethical editors and stuff out there that will want to keep using real photos, real images.
right.
But I
It's
also see there will be a percentage that will have no problem jumping ship and going to
Mm-hmm.
AI. You know.
hmm. Well, I hope not. I hope it tells the story. I sorry, Ron. I don't think I have anything on Getty now. I thought I
Oh, I
thought
know you have things on Getty.
I'm looking.
You
It's
want to
like it's
know how I know, Mark?
wow. Seriously,
Remember,
I
I
don't.
told you this story. So I
Yeah,
get,
well, that was years ago.
yep,
No, there's no there. So it was a sub agent. I have an agent in California that markets quite a few of my images.
yeah,
Still a small percentage of my
puts them
portfolio,
on
but
a calendar for a Wyoming bank that has a Wyoming
totally
wildlife
everywhere.
photographer.
So the whole point of
Oh.
an agent is is
I
is to
open up the
access.
stupid calendar from my bank that I work for. There's an image from Mark Raycroft. Actually, two of them from Mark Raycroft.
Do you want to mail it? And I'll sign it and mail it back.
I think it went up in flames. I'm not gonna. I don't
So the
know
whole
how,
point
but
of
I'm
an
pretty sure it
agent
burned.
and Minden Pictures is an agent that I work with is to access markets that I don't have globally.
Like Getty.
And no, no. And so there have been sub agents, and we have a few across the world, in Italy and different places that, but Getty, and again, I'm not trying to say anything negative about Getty, but years ago I had stuff on there. I'm on their website right now. I can't find anything. There shouldn't be anything there, and it was. I won't even get into it, but there shouldn't be that I'm aware of. It was a sub
And well, you
agent.
know what though? That brings up another great point though. I mean, I'm sure when we put those things on those stock images, we sign some kind of release or something that allows them to do some things that now that AI is a thing, they're feeling like they're legally able to go ahead and allow those AI things to use that. But that's part of the problem too. Let's be real, you know?
We can do the whole podcast on this. So
Yeah,
there
we
are
could.
probably there's lots of agents, and I know personally photographers who have signed up to some or submitted images to big agencies, and I don't know why, because what they're getting out of it, there's royalty free images. I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. Um, my agent, I work. They have a very limited number of photographers that they have, and we work very closely. And that kind of stuff would come up in conversation. We don't. It's not carte blanche like that. It's not.
Right.
And you know, I've had images on the biggest agencies around the world um, as sub agents, and those were some of the concerns that came up, and just looking at the sales reports and the percentages and what was coming in, it wasn't logical for me. So it's something to be aware of. Anybody who's contemplating that, I mean, we all work hard creating our artwork. Uh, we spend money creating it on equipment, time, travel, hiking, whatever it might be. Um, you know, for me, it's a passion that's not to be given away, and that has to be managed with with contests, with agents, if one elects to go that route. I mean, the stock is one of the questions that people ask. You know, we were going to do some questions on today's episode, but as well. But you know, is there and life still in stock? Well, yeah, there's life still in stock, but it's not what it was. It was very robust 2 decades ago because that was the go-to, and there were far more publications and than there are now. I mean, there still are publications. There still are fantastic editors. There are still great periodicals being put out with great images, authentic, ethical images all the time. But there's also, you know, ones that are being pinched with their budgets, and who knows what's happening there, case by case. But be cautious, yeah, with where one puts their images, and be aware of what they can be used for. So yeah, personally, I wouldn't be cool with my images being permitted for AI at all. I mean, there's what's the benefit to that for all the effort put in? So I mean, I have a very close relationship with my agent for reasons like this, and that was part of the reason I was interested in the relationship. Probably 20 years ago now. That
Mm-hmm.
started.
Yeah.
So Jason, where have you been lately?
Yes, let's do that.
Sorry. All right. We do
Lighten
need
the
to shift
load.
gears. It's going to be an 8 hour podcast if we're not careful.
Sorry.
So, yeah. So, the most recent trip I've been on that we haven't chatted about was a quick little weekend run to Yellowstone. And I was real hesitant to do it, to be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of going to the park, generally speaking, on holiday weekends and during the summer time when there's a lot of busyness, you know. And I decided to do it. I have a nephew who's Cooper Olson, who's kind of gotten into photography recently. His Instagram is Coop's Portfolio, I think. If I might be massacring that, but I think the last he's changed the name a couple times on me. So I think his most recent name is Coop's Portfolio. But he just turned 16 years old today. Actually, happy birthday! Shout out to Cooper Olson. But he's a young kid that's coming up into the photography world and loves photography. Has got a passion for it and got the bugs bit him, so to speak. And so my wife and I and my sister-in-law and Cooper decided to make a run to Yellowstone and for the weekend. And we had a great weekend. It was incredible. We didn't have very many jams. The park was nowhere near as busy as I expected, which really shocked me. Some of that could have just been luck on where we were focusing in the park and the times of the day we were in those areas, because we did see some busyness in the middle of the day, obviously. But for the most part, when everything's happening, we were pretty much able to move around the park at ease. So we had some really incredible encounters. Had an encounter with a very gorgeous cinnamon boar. Had an encounter with a grizzly bear sow with 3 koi cubs of the year. Had some great bison encounters. had a coyote encounter with a baby bison that had just recently killed. Some other predation, carcass events that were a little further out, but still, fun to see. And the wolves, being able to see them with the pups in the den and that from a distance, there was still some of that activity going on. So just a great trip overall. And I might have changed my mind a little bit on going to the park during the holiday weekend, but that's my latest and the greatest. And I will say, this last weekend I went down to St. George with my family. We rented an Airbnb to hang out as family with the grandkids, and I did take the camera down with me, and I made an event out of that with just photographing the grandkids and stuff. Right, so I had some fun doing that. I'm actually getting to enjoy that as much as getting out with the wildlife, to be honest. Because let's be honest, the ages they're at, they're basically wildlife. So they're they're pretty rambunctious and do a lot of fun stuff. So, but yeah, that was fun. That was a good time too. So a lot of good quality time recently with the family, and where I can, I involve the camera, and I'm enjoying the new aspect of photographing the grandkids too. So,
So
Ron,
I
where have
I
you been
was
recently?
I was in a bear jam in
Yeah, you
Yellowstone.
found the
And
one.
okay, so yeah, so I may have played a couple games to get where I got um, to get this bear, but I got turned around and found like the only parking spot left in this pullout, and I was the one blocking everybody in. So as it turns out later, it worked out to my advantage. But um, took my grandson, my daughter, and her boyfriend, went up to the park. Just a blazing quick trip. We left at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning from my mom's house in Thermopolis, Wyoming, and went up through the park. And the east gate was closed, so we had to go through Chief Joseph Highway and through Cook City, which is a lot longer trip. But we were fortunate in that I bet you before we got in the park, we had seen probably 250 head elk, saw a fox, saw a coyote, just had a great trip in and some beautiful scenery. And then got into the trip, and my grandson, of course, they slept most of the time, all three of them. I read today that the biggest compliment that you can be paid as a driver if people are willing to sleep in the car while you're driving, and they obviously trusted me with their lives immensely because they all slept all day long except when we stopped. Um, but my grandson, when he finally woke up, he's only 2, and all he wanted to see. We talked about bears. We saw a black bear right away when we got in the park. Um, we talked about bears. We talked about bison. We talked about, he calls them lope, the antelope, pronghorn. We talked about lope. We talked about deer. He didn't care. All he wanted to see was a dinosaur. So he was looking for dinos all day. And we're parked at the restroom right there at the confluence, and in the kind of the northeast head of the Lamar Valley. And this Sprinter van comes by, and it's got a big T-Rex on the side, and he starts yelling, "Dino, Dino!" And so we go over. I got his picture, with the with the van. These people get out. Their van roars like a T-Rex. They gave him a book about dinosaurs. They gave him a little dinosaur toy, and the kid's day was made. It wasn't even 8 o'clock yet. So
Wow.
we it was already a great trip. And then, just down the road from there, I ran into Jason. We knew we were both going to be there. Ran into him. We visited a little bit, and then kind of parted ways. And but they got to see wolves. They got to see bears. We did finally find a grizzly bear that was within photo range, but I got out and just kept him on my lap. We just sat down and watched, and that was as much fun as anything else. Well, then this bear headed for the water, and the water was just perfectly still, so I knew we were going to get some reflections. And so I tried to slide him down between my legs. Well, the bear was close enough that he could now recognize that it was a bear. And he shouldn't have any fear of bears because he's never been told anything like that. But I tried to slide him down between my legs instead of on my lap, and he was not having it. So he shot back up on my lap, and no, no, I don't want to be down there. And the degree of difficulty one experiences to get a sharp image is, it takes some skill. The degree of difficulty getting a sharp image with a 2-year-old on your lap that's excited about what he's seeing for the first time is makes it nearly impossible. And those thermals that we talked about coming off the water, we talked about them a few episodes ago. So you're fighting that. So you have to wait till they get fairly close, so you're not shooting through all that atmosphere. And and then the closer the bear gets, the more excited he gets. And so I finally, when he got right to the water, I passed him off to his mom for a minute, got a few images, and then I just got back and watched the bear with him again. And so I'm hard on the Park Service because I think they go a little overboard sometimes when they're managing people. But this guy that was managing this bear jam did the best job. I wish I would have gotten his name because he did an incredible job talking to people. Hey, this is great. You guys are going to get to see this bear. Yesterday he did this. So when he gets to this point, I'm going to tell everybody, go ahead and move back. You're going to move back to that point. You can view him. When I say get to your vehicles, I'm asking that you all listen to me, get to your vehicles. But he's educating people along the way. Just did a great job. So we get to the vehicles. Well, I am blocking everybody in. So he sees what's going to happen. He says, "Sir, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor." I said, "Well, what's that?" He goes, "That bear's going to cross the road. I want you to just pull out and just block traffic until he crosses." And I'm like, "Absolutely, I will." I watch The Office. That's supposed to be the answer when somebody asks you to do something, especially get in front of everybody else when there's a grizzly bear. So I slid out into the middle of the road, get some images of the bear going up the hill, and it goes right in front of the vehicle. So my grandson's able to see that as well, like 10 yards. Um, and then the bear runs up the hill a little bit. Well, I pull out. I'm the first vehicle to leave. I pull out, and the last vehicle in the bear jam line is Jason Loftus with Untamed Images by JL. As we pull through and go the other direction, and I just went down, flipped around, and came in behind Jason, and
Yeah.
we headed
I was
west.
heading the
But
other direction. I was
yeah,
heading the other
Jason was
direction.
headed the opposite
Yeah.
direction that I was. But
Yeah.
it was a good time. And then we just did the touristy stuff for the most part. Went to Old Faithful. They wanted to see the Grand Prismatic, which isn't all that grand from the ground level. It's more grand from the air. Um, but they wanted to see that. I did not care to, and I was having trouble staying awake, so I stayed back and napped with the boy. Um, so my daughter and her boyfriend went and got to see that. And then after Old Faithful, we made it up to the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, and then we're able to go back out the East Gate and got pretty lucky there as well on the way back out. Saw a couple more bears and lots of elk and bison. So it was a good day, good trip. 3:30 to 11:30 p.m. So it was a 20 hours of driving straight. So it was one of those Jason
That's
Loftus
my kind of
trips.
day.
I know
That's my
it
kind of
is.
day, baby.
I cannot do that. And then I can't
We,
sleep when I'm in a car with you anyway because you're singing. So,
too funny.
but no, it was a good day, good weekend. But
Yeah.
it's about as good as it's gotten for me lately. It's been trying times and just trying to do things to maintain sanity, but not getting enough of it. You know.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Ron, that photo you posted on Instagram of you with your grandson in the lap and his first bear, grizzly bear. I mean, that's pretty cool. It doesn't doesn't get much better than that. So
No,
it
it doesn't.
was worth that if anything, you know. But
That in a question that we were asked when we were in Salt Lake at PhotoX, and you'll hear this when you listen to that podcast, but or maybe already have at this point. One of the questions that we asked is why do you do it? And I think I answered it honestly, as did you. I think initially it was for selfish reasons and getting the images that I saw all these guys before me get. Um, and then lately it's become just a shared nature with people and especially family, and having the opportunity to be with him, introducing him to his first bear and first wildlife experience type of trip. We've gone out before and seen elk and pronghorn and that kind of thing. We've gone and watched owl nests together just so he can see, and um, but to be there with him and to see that excitement on his face and introduce him to that, passion, I think was a big moment for me as well. And I think that's probably the bigger reason why I do it. I still want to get the images, but sharing those experiences with others and trying to ignite a flame of passion in them, I think is probably it for me more than anything else.
agreed.
Yeah, that's awesome. Glad you both had great trips recently with family to share that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, same with yours. It's just one of those refresh moments. And it
Yeah.
doesn't, I agree. It does take a few days to kind of get that total reset, but anything kind of at least tempers it a little bit, just getting out even for a little bit.
Oh, 100%. That wasn't to discredit a shorter
No,
opportunity.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. The longer the better, but
An
man,
hour
that,
walk
that was
in.
only 20 hours and it was a great reset.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. It can be anything, anything
Mm,
outdoors is worth doing. And especially when you're sharing it like you both have described. That's fantastic.
yep.
And we all need more of that, I think, anyway, from at least I
Oh
know I
yeah,
do
for sure.
in today's times. So and it's a clear reminder after doing it, right? Each time too.
Hmm.
So look forward to the next.
Well, Mark, pick a couple
Sure.
quick
Do
listener
some questions.
questions.
Well, but
We're an
before
hour
jumping,
in, so we want to make
okay,
sure they're quick ones.
yeah, absolutely. The first couple are going to be funny, but I just wanted to quickly, express our gratitude to our sponsors, Canon USA, who's got some very big news happening. This could be by the time this airs right now, and pictureline.com, our fantastic sponsor in Salt Lake City, who has Colin is somebody to reach out to when these Canon releases happen, or any camera equipment for that matter. We encourage you to reach out to Colin and check their price points, and their service is fantastic, and it's often uh, very worth contacting them. Look into pictureline.com
Yeah,
before making your purchase.
they can't give you a sale price on the brand new cameras, but they sure can on accessories. So they will treat you right. And that's what I've heard back from everybody that I've sent to them. So
Yeah, there's
they've
been
been a
quite a
great
few
sponsor and very supportive.
listeners of the podcast have been very pleased with their interactions with Pictureline, and that's one of the reasons that we teamed up with them as well, right? And
Hmm.
Jason knows very well the quality of organization, and Ron too. Now, having been on site a couple of times at events there in Salt Lake City, quite an operation. So the first
Yeah.
question is one that we're going to think really hard on, but we'll make it fast. It's just your gut reaction. Is Kurt Baldwin at Kurt Baldwin Wildlife on Instagram wants to know, is it imperative a guest has a goatee to be on the podcast, or is it just recommended? What do you guys think about this goatee question? I don't know what he's talking about.
No,
It
it's
was the Goatee Club of North America, right? At
yeah.
the annual meeting. Wasn't that how we met?
At the border, yeah, they have a line for clean shaven and a line for goatee and a line for full on Canada beard. And we met in the goatee line.
Right. Yeah. I'm
The
embarrassed.
Billy Goat Convention.
Well, Kurt,
Not not so much for guests, right? Not so much for guests, but for hosts, it's
no.
No,
apparently
Yeah.
a
Yes.
requisite.
although
Yes.
I am now that my goatee is white, I'm kind of rethinking that. I don't. It might have to come off.
Hmm. I did that
Are
for
you
them.
like dyeing your mustache right now, or
Yeah. How is it
No, you
that way?
can see the flickers. You can see the flickers in there too.
Do you have like
It's go.
it's on
AI
its
It's
way?
on
it's
on the
only a matter
presentation?
of time.
That's
You
what
what,
a
Mark?
great evolution. How it's dark and then you got the dark under the lip.
Uh,
It's actually a little in between, isn't it? Now. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
This second to none.
I'm I'm full on in trouble now because my eyebrows are even getting white hairs in them. So
Before you know it, the hair on top of your head will turn white.
I may have to sacrifice buying that R1 from Colin and buy some hair dye. I've, I've
What
paid
color?
with.
Would be creative, man. Don't
Oh
just you know.
no, I'm not a very creative person outside of photography. So I'll just go straight brown.
Ah,
Oh,
all
dang
right,
it. Hiccups
all
again.
right. Well, yeah, it's absolutely not essential for guests, and for some reason, it's a coincidence that we all have goatees, and I just do it to try and look as handsome as these two guys. So thanks, Kurt, for the funny question. And the next one is from Matthew Sullivan, who has an interesting Instagram handle, formerly homeless photographer, who does some really cool macro and underwater work. Some really interesting fish that I guarantee you will have not seen some of those before. So it's worth checking out his Instagram. Matthew's question, I get back to it here. Matthew's question is, if the three of you, this is another one we're going to have to think about. If the three of you were in a foot race with a bear, who would get eaten first? Now, I'm
Depends
wondering,
on how short the race is. I'm going to
well,
give
Matthew,
that caveat.
where's this question come from? Is he watching this thing? Just where do these?
He's a
But
fish
anyway,
Just
photographer.
waiting
He's a
to hear the story.
he's a reptile guy.
so any
I
ideas? I mean,
I
who
think
knows, right? That we've never,
I
thankfully.
have an idea.
Well, okay.
Yeah. But I
So,
mean, I don't think it'd be me, and here's the only reason is I don't play fair. And I'm
Well,
not saying I'm the fastest by any means, but I carry bear spray for a very specific reason, and it's not to spray the bear.
oh, I see. Dirty
It's
player.
to season up and or disable the folks that are with me,
Oh,
so so that I can be the fastest person there.
that's exactly the same reason I carry a taser.
I'll be
So it's just going to be a
40
quick
yards
draw to
away
see who can get
and
to it
watch you.
first.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
That being said, we don't run from bears, right? So
No,
that it's
Oh,
all
run! Oh, yeah,
out of the
never, never,
question.
never.
Never run from a bear. But it was a funny question, which is why I had to come up. Who would get eaten first? Because we go back to that, right? I've had friends I've taken on trips who've accused me of taking them on trips into the interior of Alaska because they were just heavier and slower than me for that joke of a race,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
All right. This next question is by Zach at Shots by Shops at Instagram. So shots underscore by underscore shops, SHOPES. This is an interesting question. What is something you each do when you find yourself in a photography rut? And it's like I live for the photography rut.
Amen.
And not just ruts, right? Right from
Yeah.
September, take you right to December, all those ruts. So
Yeah.
what do you do when I
I mean,
find,
that's my happy place.
yeah, I photograph and my big thing, honestly, more than the photography is just the animal behavior. and just being witness to it. And so, yeah, I'm all in on the rut.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah. The elk
to,
rut specifically is my favorite, but
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
I like to start out with the elk rut, and then when that ruts out, then I move right into the moose rut, and then when that's over, I slide into the deer rut.
Well,
And
caribou,
at the
we got caribou first.
well, you can do caribou. We
Yeah,
That's not as common for me, but yes, I agree. And then I
caribou.
like to slide right into the sheep rut after that.
Well, yeah, whitetail, then mule deer, then sheep.
Hmm.
So much rut
Yeah.
to be in.
Yeah.
It's
Lots of rut. We
Yeah.
didn't mention bison rut either, but it's pretty incredible too. So,
Oh, yeah.
oh,
Yeah. In
that's
fact,
yeah.
first. That is
I
first.
was
Yeah.
in
That's
Yeah.
first,
Canada, and
actually.
our rental van almost bred by a bison bull a few years ago on a trip. It was pretty exciting.
Made some great video.
Thankfully, I was in gear. Yeah, we were driving through a giant paddock, my cousin and I, and it wasn't supposed to be rut because it was later in the fall, but there was a female in heat, and these two bulls were pursuing her, and the one bull bred the cow. I don't remember 40 yards from the van, but then the second bull came running up behind the van, thinking that this white caravan. I don't know. Anyway, we got out of the way really quickly. Made for a good, still does a good story. So Zach, yeah, thank you. That's what we do when we find ourselves in a photography rut. Do
I
we
in
answer honestly?
a serious answer to his question. I
Yeah.
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
the way he
Right.
may have intended it, um, I think just try to change it up. Sometimes take a break. Sometimes go back, re-edit images. Sometimes go try to find something different. Sometimes do what Mark did and just go take a weekend and get refreshed. Um, all of those things. Don't be afraid to put the camera down to get out of a photographic rut sometimes.
Amen. Yeah.
That's what I like to do. Yeah. I mean,
Yep. I would agree.
if there's a trip coming up, then you're going to get back into it, right? Once you're
Hmm.
traveling on the trip, it happens naturally. But when that's not the case, if it's feeling overwhelming in any way, whether it's photography or editing, any component of it is just to take a break, and it doesn't have to be long to feel that. So, I mean, that to me, that's the I don't for these interior trips. I had taken cameras, but I didn't take one this time. I just took my smartphone because I didn't want that to be part of it. I was there for the recharge, and yeah. So great question, and Zach's stuff on Instagram's fantastic. Is Western Pennsylvania wildlife images on there. Check it out.
Those were quick ones. We got time for another.
We can do another one.
Yeah, a quick shout out too, real quick, and for those that are interested, and you may not, and that's fine too. Don't get me wrong, but I did. I was recently on a different podcast as a guest, and it was the Photographer's Mindset podcast, and we actually addressed that in quite some detail on that show. So if you're interested in hearing a lot more detail about maybe how I approach it, you're welcome to go check that out too. So
That was a great episode to listen to.
thanks, Mark.
I haven't
So
listened to
here's
it
another
yet,
question. That's sorry, Ron. What?
I just said I haven't listened to it
Oh,
but I fully intend to.
yeah,
yet.
it
It's
was really
just been a
good.
little busy.
Yeah.
I enjoy their show. Next question from James Evans Photography. I've bought a GoPro. What sort of wildlife applications do they have?
Tons,
Yeah.
tons
Beluga,
and
where do
tons
you?
of
Mark's probably been
applications,
one of the
James.
biggest advocates of those tools on the podcast for quite some time now. And yeah, I mean, Mark, I mean, if you go back and listen to some of the older podcasts, Mark's got example after example of how those things have come into play for him and how he's used them in the field. But yeah, I mean, we could list off a ton of stuff, right, Ron? I mean, we could go just listen to our Churchill podcast
Yeah,
and you'll see how we were able to use those. We brought them. Well, I didn't, but Ron brought them, and some other folks did because I didn't really think there would be an application. And then we had one of the best experiences on the whole trip because of those GoPros,
yeah.
unexpectedly. So
I've used it a ton underwater. Um, I'll, I will tell you, uh, the applications are endless. I've got BBC credit because of GoPro work. Got some incredible SwiftFox footage above ground and underground using GoPros that were modified to have infrared sensors and that kind of thing. Um, Most of what I've used it for is underwater footage, but from kokanee salmon to brook trout to, yeah, the whales, um, sunfish, soft shell turtles, bluegill. Just the applications and opportunities are endless, and this is again one of those things that, going back to the previous question about getting in a rut, change your tool up or throw on a different, a wide angle lens. Just try to do something, anything different, is another way you can kind of work your way out of that and into more of a creative headspace. Mark's done a lot with the larger ungulates, the megafauna, with caribou and moose and that kind of thing. But I've had rocks where there's a kangaroo rat and never had the ability to photograph them before, but now just stick that tool down in a crack and these rats go back and forth, use the same trails through these rock outcroppings, and now you can get footage that nobody else is ever going to see. Nobody else is ever going to notice that it's there, but now you've got video of it. It's the opportunities are endless. And now with the ability to program them to be basically a camera trap, that just opens up tons of other doors, for footage that you may not be able to get otherwise.
Yeah, they're super powerful little tools, right? And that's it's always worth, if you have one, putting it in your pack, because there's no weight, there's no
No
space really
way.
consumed by
Mm-hmm.
them. It's just before a trip, make sure you've charged your batteries and the memory card's got the space on it you need. I format my memory cards for the action cameras or GoPros before the trip, and because what I do is sometimes I do a setup. It's the same kind of thing with the ungulates in this case. Try to plan where they're going to walk to. There may be a pinch point in the terrain, and the animals are in one area, but I'm hoping they'll go to the other, and I'll set up a camera or two on a pinch point with just a articulating clamp tool to vegetation, or a little tripod on the ground, watching shadows, of course, if that's the case with the tripod, if it's a sunny day, because they're wide angle. But I always
Mm-hmm.
then will plug it into an external battery. Then that gives me the juice, and I have a memory card in the GoPro that will run for 3 hours. I maybe even get bigger ones now. I don't know. But that's what I have. So I know if I set that up, I've got a 3 hour window that if they come through, buy it, then it happens. And or sometimes, it's a matter of, if walking with these animals, to see them coming, you can basically place it and keep walking and hopes to get it. So it's fun. It's a different approach, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and the images. I have two rutting moose, and it took almost the 3 hours on the clip on the memory card to get it. But there was one little alleyway through the vegetation, and there was a bull tending a cow, and I set the camera up on it, and they were quite a ways off. But if they headed up the valley this way, they might go through this window in the vegetation. So I had it on the battery pack, clamped to the tree, and it was right near the end that they did it, and they practically brushed the GoPro. And to me, I mean, obviously, you can never be that close to such big animals, nor it wouldn't make sense to be. But the GoPro gives it an angle and perspective that, or Action Cam,
Mm-hmm.
DJI, I've used them too, as well as the GoPros. Um, but yeah, it's fun for sure. There are lots of applications, and underwater. I mean, the fish, the salmon, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they're spawning, to play with that, to attach it to a rock or to put it on a stick and hold it in. It's just a lot of fun, and it feeds our creative, compositionally creative juices in a different way than looking
Mm-hmm.
through a camera that we're used to, like a mirrorless camera. So that's a great question. And it's James Evans Photography on Instagram, and he has pictures, honestly, from all over the world: African content, European, and Right, thank you for the question, James. Keep the questions coming in because we are collecting them. We will have more episodes with listener questions coming forward. We always appreciate your thoughts and insight and comments as well. Please continue to share the news of our new Beyond the Wild podcast with people who you think might enjoy it. For those of you that have subscribed, assuming that it's active with the Patreon to support our efforts for that little bit each month, we are very grateful. Thank you for doing that. And YouTube, let's not forget about YouTube. We're on all audio platforms, but for the majority of our episodes, our producer Jason Griffiths adds significant and relevant video and still photographs to each episode. So if you're watching on YouTube, you have the joy of that. Or if we're talking about something, we often have the item and hold it up, and there's a little more interaction that way too. So we encourage you, when time allows, to watch on YouTube. Something I do with podcasts is I just have one of those little mini tripods and have it set up by my monitor when I'm editing with my phone, playing a show, and then I can watch it at the corner of my eye and enjoy it that way while and like listening to a podcast when editing. I mean, I love music, but a podcast that's an hour or 2 hours long, I mean, obviously you can pause it to do other things, but it gets me through the work process with more focus than music does. So I listen to all kinds of other podcasts, and we greatly appreciate your interest and support and for tuning into our show. Once again, thank you to pictureline.com and Canon USA. And guys, it's been great to reconnect. It's been a bit of a spell, so it's nice to see your faces and hear about your trips again. And I'm looking forward to doing another one soon. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
But I just also wanted to end this one. I wanted to also call out somebody for something positive on social media. And I think it's something that's really hit me recently. Couple things. One is, how can I do a better job of giving back to the community of photography? One of the folks I listened to at the PhotoX, really, their story hit me pretty hard. And it's something I'm really focusing on right now. That's one thing. But the other thing is, just on social media in general, we see a lot of negative things about bear jams and how people misbehave, and photographers are this, photographers are that, and look at them all, blah blah blah. Well, this gal named Anna, her Instagram is Jackson Hole Wild at Heart. She actually shared a story today, and it was a positive comment about a bear sighting, a bear jam. And she made a comment about how well behaved everybody was and how amazing the encounter was, and everybody had a very respectful encounter, and so on. And I just reached out to her and told her thanks for setting a good example and sharing something positive. But something for all of us to think about, right? We see the negative all the time. When we get a chance to share something positive like that, I think it behooves all of us to do so. It's something I'm going to try to do more of myself as well, is just to try to, we have a lot of positive encounters out doing wildlife photography. How often do we talk about them? We talk about the negative ones quite often. So something to think about, food for thought. But Anna, thanks for being a great example to all of us. And maybe we all can think about where that might apply and how we might be able to be a part of that. So thank you.
That's a wrap for another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wild Podcast, and make sure to check out our website at beyondthewildpodcast.com for additional show notes, information, and photographs for all of our episodes. You can watch our podcast on YouTube, where we'll include video and photo content, and subscribe. We welcome your comments, questions, and feedback on all of our social media platforms. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. Until next time, embrace adventure in the great outdoors with a camera in hand.